I do think that sometimes we think incorrectly about the whole agreement disagreement thing in the sense that, you know, we should be disagreeing all the time, right? Sometimes we're going to find some agreement in there, and that's going to be great. But a feature of a country that allows me to be free is that I allow you to be free too.
Mhm.
And so the fact that we disagree with each other is not a surprise. It's something that we just do together, right?
This is All Peacemakers Needed, where two everyday people discuss the need for peacemakers. Welcome to All Peacemakers Needed. Today, my guest is Liz Joyner, the founder and president of The Village Square, a nonprofit out of Tallahassee, Florida, that for the better part of 2 decades has been bringing people who may not think alike into the same room and helping them build trust across their differences. Liz has a master's degree in social work with an interest in family systems theory. She was honored by United Church Women as a woman of peace. And we're grateful she's taken some time out of her busy life to meet with us. We're eager to learn from you, Liz. Welcome.
Thank you. It's fun to be with you today.
Great. So, we first like to just ask a little bit about our guests. We like to hear about our guests' hobbies.
So I had interesting hobbies before I did this work. And to be honest, it has been such a big commitment starting a nonprofit, keeping it alive for 2 decades, that I don't do so much of that anymore. But what I used to do is I used to quilt. I would dye my own fabrics and then I would make quilts out of them. And my probably my claim to fame, although it's not really fame, but it's been shown in a show, is a quilt called Threads of a Nation. And it is a 5 foot by 7 foot American flag that's made out of little 2 inch squares of fabric that I've dyed. And I put like the commission papers of my family who've served in the military in the flag. And then my father-in-law was killed in Vietnam, so I took a rubbing of his name off the Vietnam Wall. And then just, amazing American quotes through the years, from the Statue of Liberty, from the Gettysburg Address, from Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. So once I finished that whole thing, I thought because I have 2 daughters, I needed to make another one. So I have two of them.
Oh, that is so nice. Is there a place where we can see it online or?
Yeah, I can send you a link to it.
Yes, awesome. We would
Because we've
love to.
riffed a little bit off of that, the quilt, and told the story of it through the years of the Village Square.
Yes, I feel like I might have. Is it on the? Yeah, I might have seen it
Yeah, we
then.
use it as art sometimes too.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it was beautiful. But yes, send me a direct link and we will share it with our listeners. Well, thank you. Yes, this is a passion of yours, a love of yours is working on the Village Square. And so I'm sure it is taking a lot of your time and energy, even meeting with us.
Yeah, it's fun to talk to people. It's funny because when I first started this, it was very lonely. In fact, we had to explain to people what we thought the problem was.
Mhm.
And we'd get a decent number of blank faces, like, "Hmm, okay, maybe." Needless to say, we do not have to explain the problem anymore. And one of the joys of my career has been having the cavalry come in. And that for us is over 500 organizations in this bridge building space. And so, now I started with maybe 4 different groups in the country that did this work. And now there are over 500. And
It's
that's really not even counting all of them. And,
right.
I think that's a really amazing thing. Yeah, it's an amazing tribute to American citizens who just stop their lives and see a problem and work to solve it.
It is. It is amazing. Yeah. So you've told us a little bit about the Village Square and how it's grown. Can you tell us a little more, like for those who may not know about it and what inspired you to start it?
Yeah, so what inspired us to start it is a very contentious local issue came to the ballot, and there was like a big fight in town in sort of ways that are really dysfunctional, right? So there were a lot of ad campaigns. Nobody really, there was not really any good place that you could sit and talk about what the real issues were. And at the time, I was running a reelection campaign for a local city commissioner. I got to see the relationships he had around him. He was one of the major opponents of this. It was a coal plant that was considered for our local community. And he had very close friends who were some of the most high profile proponents for the coal plant. And so I got to see their conversations, and they were real and they were substantive. And so at the same time, national politics, which I knew more about, were kind of heading south, and they were becoming more digital, which I think is a really important aspect of why we're so dysfunctional. And my first reaction was, oh, we've got a problem. And I started talking to these local leaders about starting the Village Square, and then we were born. And I guess so. What we did first was we had a dinner at the square series, and so we would gather on sort of the same theme 4 times a year as a community. So, 150 plus people in the room. We'd have dinner together. It would be a social event, but then we'd also hear different opinions on different aspects of the issue. And our first seasons and programs was America's Energy Future. And that year ended, the fourth program, we had the proponents and the opponents of the coal plant that inspired the organization together on a stage. And actually, their photo is behind me. Can you see the people in the lineup?
Yes.
They actually had a good enough humor that they let me Photoshop them into a lineup that says the usual coal suspects. And we were off. And so over the years, we have kind of added different gathering points with the mission to build civic trust between people who don't look or think alike. So we think that disagreement is a feature, not a bug of a big, complex, free society. And so we sort of are always sort of looking at new ways to keep gathering members of our community so that they can see the goodwill and the humanity in people who don't agree with them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're, getting in action. It's like peacemaking or bridge building in action, not just conceptualizing it or talking about it, which is what we're doing now. But then you went the bigger step and say, let's put these people together in a
Yeah,
room and share their opinions. And it's something that we want to try to improve in our local town as well, but we're still kind of in the gathering information stage. But I just love that, and I love the concept of the value and dignity of that we can show to others who don't agree with us or have
yeah.
different aspects or belief systems or outlook that they have in their life. So that's
Yeah, just, this last 2 decades of really just knowing people who disagree with me politically. It really has changed the way that I see political differences completely. Because it hasn't really changed necessarily very often the way that I view issues, it's completely changed the way that I view people who disagree with me. Again, I can see that they really mean that they're not just trying to make trouble, that their intentions are good, and I kind of you can usually see their point at least, right?
right.
When you know them. So I think that one of the main reasons we're having such difficulties right now is because we don't know our political foes.
Right. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I think, yeah, and just the separation, we're just too separated, whether we're not, like, even in my daily life, I associate with people who think like me, not even just
Right.
my social media or anything else. It's people I walk and talk with, right? They
Yeah.
think like me. And I think it takes some courage, for one, to talk to someone who doesn't think like you. I am trying to think of ways how to do that in my personal life. And it's scary. It is scary because I want to keep the quote unquote peace, right? I want to, like, oh, we'll
Right.
just, do shallow conversations.
Yeah.
But in my heart, I'm like, I want to talk about the deeper things and things that I really care about, but then I only talk about it with people who agree with me.
Yeah.
So I just, for 20 years doing such great, courageous work, it's really inspiring.
Well, thanks. We actually had as a guest one time the author of The Big Sort, Bill Bishop, and Bill's scholarship describes exactly what you're talking about, which is not only do we have these increased differences, but increasingly all of our communities are growing more similar. Our, the space time, the place that we spend our recreational time, the where we work, everything is increasingly growing more ideologically segregated. And actually my argument would be that that's exactly what the problem is. That were we if I could wave a magic wand and make it so everybody suddenly had at least a couple of good friends who were politically different than them, the major parts of our problems would, I think, go away. And again, we're going to continue to disagree on politics, on political strategies, on priorities, on policy, but we become vulnerable to bad actors taking our time, money, and power if we see people who disagree with us as the enemy. It's really dangerous.
Yes, yes. In my personal life, like in my very small circles of influence, I'm always trying to insert in a very polite way, let's remove the us them. I hate that so much. And I still see it. I still see us, I call it us them language. And I still see it and hear it in my very small circles. And so I always like, well, I see it a little differently. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, but I love that advice. So I need to do that. I need to find, like, even my family, my entire family, we think the same. So I need
Mine
to
too,
find,
by the way. Yeah.
yeah, I need to find that friend. Yeah, we need to learn some skills to do this, I think, how to
That,
actually do it.
yeah, that, and then, the other thing that I think sometimes we underplay the power of healthy groups in helping us solve this problem. So, human beings are very groupish, and we behave in ways that conform to sort of the expectations of our group. Well, if our group is ideologically diverse, racially diverse, religiously diverse, if that in fact is who we keep company with at least part of the time, a lot of things happen pretty easily. Because I think at the same time as humans are very groupish, and we do tend to sort of fall into that us versus them really easily. And in some ways, the human default setting is tribes of humans, you know, going around the plains and meeting other tribes of people
Yeah,
and deciding if they're friend or foe. And
right.
so, in some ways, we're sort of out over our skis and sort of of how we live. So that is a very human trait to
Yes.
find yourself in groups that are doing the us them thing. But another amazing human trait is that we're astoundingly reciprocal. We reciprocate kindness so readily to people who have shown us any kind of kindness or decency. I mean, just watch how, the person, you open a door for someone and they open the door for
Yeah.
the people after them, right?
Yeah.
So if we're in proximity to each other, that kind of reciprocal kindness starts to work its magic. And so sometimes I'm not totally sure if we grouped up the way that we should be grouping up, at least some of the time. I'm not sure that there's that many more things that we need other than that, right? It's just a little bit of good positive contact with people who aren't like us, and a little bit of that reciprocal kindness flowing, and all of a sudden now you have a group that is respectful of difference of opinion, who, I mean, the people who disagree with me, who I'm very, very, very close to, I don't care that they disagree with me, right?
Hmm.
That disagreement is about 30 things down the list of what I care about them. And
Hmm.
so the problem is we're not in those. places where that human superpower can surface.
Yes, yes. Wow, such great advice. And I love how associate it with like a superpower and how we can encouraging us all to find that group of people who don't think like us.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a little bit about the reciprocal kindness, which kind of goes into my next question a little bit. In a recent essay in the Deseret News, you describe how hate rolls or gains momentum. And I definitely see a lot of that. But so, how
Yeah.
can we help peacemaking gain momentum?
Oh, that is a really great question. And also a hard one. I can't quote exactly what, but there's lots of data that says that negative emotions do move faster and harder, right? So it's easier to spread hate and,
Mm-hmm.
and distrust than it is to spread kindness and respect. But I think I would argue that the people who are taking advantage of rolling hate are a little better at what they do than the people who are trying to create rolling peace.
Yes, I
Um,
agree.
so one of the arguments that I'm regularly making is that it's kind of a tendency in the field of bridge building and peacemaking to I think make a couple of slight mistakes. One is that, I mean, obviously it is work, right? The fact that it is so serious. This is so we are in such a dangerous place, right? This is not a casual challenge we have. It is, from my perspective, an existential one. I think there's real risk that we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it as a diverse democracy on their side of this. So it's serious, right? And so when serious people try to take on serious tasks, they tend to do it in a serious way, right?
Yes, yeah,
So they tend to sort of take all the fun out of it and make it feel like it's work.
yeah,
And so when you think about the differential there, right, is you've got people who are kind of almost feeding electronic M&Ms to people to try to get them to hate, to be angry because the anger will propel what it is they want to see. And then you have a bunch of well-meaning people who kind of are like they just came out of HR
yeah.
and they're saying, well, we need to have a serious conversation
Mhm.
and these are the rules for our serious conversation and we need to talk seriously about local ordinance 759 and I think that they're using tactics that I understand, but I think they're the wrong ones, right?
Mhm.
It needs to be. I'm regularly sort of advocating that this work needs to be way more like evangelical preaching
Mhm.
than again like the HR department run amok. And obviously that's like a different set of skills. I'm not an evangelical preacher. I'm not, I mean, I try to evangelize the power of bringing people together who have differences of opinion. But I do think in some ways our field kind of lacks people who are giving that message in a way that is incredibly inspiring because it is inspiring, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you think about how we have 350 million people who we've just celebrated our 250th anniversary. Before some of these ideals we've been trying to operationalize, albeit imperfectly, people just killed each other when they didn't agree with each other, right? So
right.
this is
Yeah.
a precious thing that we should feel incredibly inspired to keep alive. And so I think sometimes we're kind of going in the wrong door if we
Mhm.
want numbers of people to follow us. And then I would say the just another thing is I think we're not thinking groupishly enough. We're thinking too individually.
Mhm.
So we're thinking of well, if one person talks to one person, you're going, that's two people.
Mhm. Right, right.
Um,
Yeah.
let's start, and that's actually why we believe that local is really powerful because the people who live here in Tallahassee, Florida with me, we have cross-cutting relationships around all sorts of things. People play, their kids play soccer together, they work together, they maybe went to high school together, and we can form a new group and easily, right? And inside of that group, people change really naturally. And a lot of the problems that we're having decrease. And then maybe I would also add one other thing that floats into my mind is I think sometimes we tend to think of this as being a little this work again, you say work.
Right.
It needs to be part of our lives, right? Instead of work, but we tend to sort of therapize it, right? So we sort of make it into a therapy thing. And I think that's kind of barking up the wrong tree too. I don't think this is really, I think this is about us having different relationships in our lives. I think we need better groups, more diverse groups. And once we have those, a lot of this problem will fade away and peace will have a little bit more, it will have a little bit more role too.
Such great advice to be, think outside the box, be more creative, find groups, be part of groups that are already diverse or help create them. Yeah, I think that's great advice and maybe not be so serious.
Honestly, it has gotten way harder to have fun while doing this work, right? Because
Yes.
it's gotten more serious, it's gotten more urgent.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't want to act like it's, I mean, sometimes it's inappropriate to
Yeah.
approach it that way. But sort of as an example, we have a program that we do. We just did the 11th annual Created Equal Race Founding Ideals in our hometown in partnership with our county government, and it's a big, huge room full of 400 or 500 people. It's kind of a nightclub, drinks, big stage with lights and everything. And we had and actually in some ways when things get more difficult, we do more of this. The program this last year was on the soul of food. And it was about food in the Black community and enjoying and celebrating. And so that's kind of an example of, we are able to get a very wide variety of people in our community to that event. And while it didn't take on some of the most serious aspects of racial division, it did gather people across racial division in a humanizing way. And
Right.
so there, I think there are ways to approach this moment that I think will be more successful, that will scale better, that will get the variety of people you need in the room, and that has a chance of meeting the moment that we're in.
I do feel that not only is it more urgent, but I think I'm hoping that there is a little bit of craving for it. That's what
Yeah.
we've noticed a little bit from the people that came to our first event. They were like, we need more of this.
Yes.
So I do think there is a desire to have more, peacemaking or kindness or bridge building concepts brought out there as best we can. But we'll
Yeah, I
try to
think
be
most
more
people,
fun.
yes, most people are pretty tired of this. The
Yes,
vast
I think
majority of,
so.
so I mean, this is definitely something that's being propelled by the minority of citizens in the United States. And frankly, probably really even the minority of leaders in the United States.
Yes, right.
Most people are tired of it.
Yes,
And
it's just
it's a matter of sort of getting out of this kind of circular, equal and opposite reaction, vicious cycle and getting that virtuous cycle rolling.
yes. On the Village Square website, it states that your events are built to foster dialogue, encourage disagreement, and ultimately increase empathy. We are really interested in empathy as well. So, how can everyday peacemakers build more empathy in our day to day lives?
So there is no substitute for direct contact with people who are different than you. There isn't. Now we can, like, if you have, I'm sort of always surprised with how even just one relationship can change things. So if you and I really disagree on political matters and we forge a relationship anyway, the truth is that one relationship, I think, does change how everybody, like how each of us will see all the other people who disagree with us in our lives, right? And so I think maybe the one piece of advice is really just start small. who in your life might meet that criteria for you? Somebody that you really have something in common with, that you like, and then but you kind of think, their politics, I just don't understand them.
Yeah.
When I started the Village Square, there was somebody like that in my life who I just knew through a mom network. And I just never understood her politics, but she's just the most amazing human being. And
Yeah.
she sent out this annual Christmas card that was so creative and wonderful that people would just ask to get on her Christmas list.
Yeah.
So I asked to get on her Christmas list, and when I started the Village Square, reached out to her and her husband, and we kind of we sort of walked that relationship along a little ways. And again, I can't look at someone who who disagrees with me politically now and not think, well, they can't be so bad because, because I know my friend. And I think that I think it's actually kind of transformative that if you don't have a relationship where you really do disagree and you actively disagree, right? Then try getting one. Just start that with that. And I do think that sometimes we think incorrectly about the whole agreement disagreement thing in the sense that, you know, we should be disagreeing all the time, right? Sometimes we're going to find some agreement in there and that's going to be great. But a feature of a country that allows me to be free is that I allow you to be free too.
Mhm.
And so the fact that we disagree with each other is not a surprise. It's something that we just do together, right? And so we engage disagreement, and sometimes actually it's from disagreement. I can't be in rooms of people anymore where everybody agrees. It actually is very uncomfortable to me. It's very flat.
Yeah.
And and I think it's because you need disagreement to solve problems, right? Fortune 500 companies know that. They don't say, I'm going to hire a million people who are just the same. They hire all sorts of different kinds of people because they know different ideas come from different heads.
Yeah.
And so if you start seeing that the disagreement as being generative, interesting, then I think you could sort of turn the corner and you're in the place that we need to be in more now.
Wow, that these challenges you are inviting us to do. Even just me alone, I'm like, oh, that is so scary, but and hard to do for me. I think, but I do understand that it is very valuable. And I can, as you're mentioning it, I can name like a few people already. I'm like, I need to really reach out. I mean, we're friends, but we
Yeah,
never talk about anything really deep. And
right.
anytime we do, and I feel like it might go that direction, I like walk away.
Yeah,
And just yeah, like you're saying, it's boring. But to me, I'm like, it's comfortable, right? You're like, I can't go into it. You prefer a very diverse group. I prefer a very similar group because it feels comfortable and I feel safe
yes.
and I
Yes.
feel seen. And you are challenging us to push back against that and say, no, you can still feel safe. You can still feel seen. You can
Yeah.
still feel understood. And they can too. And wow, that is a great challenge. I'm hoping we can think of ways to do that in our personal life and in our town. So
Yeah.
thank you for encouraging us to do that really hard thing, at least in my opinion. You've been doing it for
Yeah.
at least 20 years, probably your entire life. But this is really new territory for me.
Well, and I think for a lot of people, and actually, sort of one other strategy that would help with what you're describing is that we call the core catalyst model. So anytime we're trying to build a big group in the community to come in for programming that we want to have a politically and every other way diverse group, we start with a small group of people who we invite in to be the sort of the core of the project, and that small group represents the diversity that we want to see in the big group. And so that has been a very successful way to do it. So if each of the people in your group start small by just reaching out to one person who they disagree with politically, who they think might be interested in, building peace. And then And then that group becomes a bigger group of 5 or 6 people. And so you've got sort of cross-cutting relationships inside that group. You've got the people who agree with each other and people who disagree with each other, but now they have friends inside the group. And so we find that that is a structure that then you almost think of it like rings of a tree as it grows bigger. Is so really big projects that we've done around race in particular because we thought that there were and around race at challenging times, right? When we did a project called Local Color at a time when there was increasingly race-related violence in communities. And so we knew we had to sort of build a strong core, and that's how we did it. We had maybe about 10 people who were involved in that core group. We met for a long time, got to know each other really well. And then we grew it out to a group of 75 people, and we asked each of those 10 people to say, who do you know who might be different than you, racially, politically, who we want to invite into this? And so when we then went to the 75 people, there were just a ton of relational, cross-cutting relationships that created a glue for this group, right?
Mhm.
And it was only then that we advertised in a public way to have a big event. And so yeah, think rings of a tree, starting with the smallest ring.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that advice. Everything I'll be sharing with our team and with other people too. Great advice for any town, community, family that wants to,
Yeah.
improve on peacemaking or bridge building, and more importantly, to find people who think differently than them and enrich their life because of those other ideas. So you said that, and we talked about this a little bit already, that living out a healthy, pluralistic ideal has to begin and take root in our hometown. So we are interested in, building bridges, building peace activities in our hometown where we live. So how can we do that? Do you have any more advice about that?
Well, I think that it's like a natural thing to look at the deteriorating national political situation, and it's sort of like it requires attention. It screams, look at me, right? But I think that we're looking in the wrong place for both, in some ways, what's foundationally wrong and certainly how to fix it. So until we live lives that really that are sort of committed to the idea that diverse people can self-govern, right? If we're going to believe that, then we've got to really believe it. We got to see it in our lives. We got to see that we live a life that has diverse people in it. And it's only then that we're going to stop electing people who are trying to divide us and trying to make us hate each other because I mean, it's a business model. And unfortunately, until they hear no, that doesn't work because I don't actually hate these people. I disagree with them, but I don't hate them.
Right.
Then I think that it's still going to be a better business model than building peace. And so I think there's really no shortcut for manifesting these ideals in the life you live in your hometown. So if you never go out of the house and you're just a keyboard warrior, start there. If all the groups that you're a part of agree with you on everything, find one that doesn't, and they're findable.
Yeah.
If you go to church with a bunch of people who agree with you on everything, maybe you find a church that has a little bit more diversity in it. Although that again is one of our problems is everything's becoming less diverse.
Yeah.
Um, and and again, I mean, it's been kind of a weird thing to watch the national situation devolve as we've been growing community locally
Mhm.
because it's like, wait, I think you should pay attention to us down here. It's actually really different. It
Yes.
changes everything when it's done proximally. Changes
Right.
it. And so if we're going to turn this around, we have to plant seeds from sea to shining sea where you live. And it's easier to do than people think it is. You just got to start walking the walk. We have I think it's 16 years, 17 years we've been doing a program called God Squad. And it's
Yes, I read
politically
about that.
diverse faith leaders and think of them sort of as the core ring of the tree, and they have really close relationships with each other. They can talk about anything.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so that, that's kind of an interesting way in to solve this problem as well.
Yes. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for all the advice you've provided so far and the guidance and helping us learn more about the Village Square and your great work. Before we end, do you have any more tips for us, the everyday peacemaker, trying to improve our life and the lives of others around us about peacemaking?
I would say don't give up on the big, bold American idea.
Mm,
And I think it's easy when you're faced with the foibles of human beings
yeah.
and they feel ascendant right now to think this isn't, there's something wrong with the basic concept of what we're trying to do there. I do not believe there is. I
Mhm.
believe that we need to redevote ourselves to the highest principles of our founding and have all the people in the room who should be there, who weren't at the beginning but should be there now, and and just don't give up on that because I fear that in this incredibly divisive environment that peace builders are going to, and I think that that will be a devastating error. I think if anything, right now, people who are trying to make our democracy healthier need to be doubling down on those ideas. All men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. Those are extraordinary ideas. And we hold these truths to be self-evident at a time when they were not self-evident at all. It was a pretty bold and crazy thing they were doing. It's less bold and crazy now because we've worked for 250 years. So I hope people don't give up. I hope they keep believing that those ideals are worth pursuing.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us on All Peacemakers Needed, Liz. We will re listen to this many times and gather our thoughts so that we can be better peacemakers. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It was fun, Nell.
Thank you.